Alcohol is no longer a banned substance in sports. Yes, you heard that right. In 2018, they removed it from the World Anti-Doping Agency, or WADA's banned substance list. So first, let me give some backstory on it, and then I'll break down why it was removed. Okay, what is WADA, and how does it determine if a substance should be banned? Steroids versus just your regular protein powder. Well, the World Anti-Doping Agency, or WADA, is an international organization that was established back in 1999, and their primary role is to set global standards for anti-doping rules, performance-enhancing substances. Now, you can see here on the screen, it has 5 areas of influence, but the main thing to know is that WADA is its own entity, okay? It interacts separately with each individual sports bodies. These are the international federations, like track and field, they have their world governing body, World Athletics. Archery has their world governing body, World Archery. And it also is recognized by the national anti-doping organizations. These are like USADA, and also with major event organizations such as the International Olympic Committee or the IOC. So they interact with each one of these individually. Well, what they do is that each year they publish a World Anti-Doping Code, and that serves as the foundation for anti-doping policies, rules, regulations across all sports and all countries. So it's WADA that makes the code, and it's the individual sports bodies or federation that do the testing and enforce the rules. Now, we're going to come back to this. It's important because sometimes the sports federations will disagree with what WADA has added or removed to the banned substance list, and alcohol is one thing that they disagree on. So we're going to come back to that, but first, how does WADA determine if a substance should be banned? Well, it has to meet 2 out of 3 criteria. Number 1, it has potential to enhance or does enhance sports performance. These are things like steroids, right? Obvious performance enhancing drug, so it's banned. Number 2, it represents an actual or potential health risk to an athlete. These are things like rat poisoning. Yes, rat poison is actually a performance enhancing stimulant at small doses, but it definitely represents a health risk to an athlete. And that's why in 2016 at the Rio Olympics, the Olympic bronze medalist winner, weightlifter Azat Artikov, was stripped of his medal because he tested positive for the rat poison strychnine. And number 3 is it violates the spirit of the sport. Now, this one is a bit subjective and has a little bit more interpretation to it. We'll come back to this in a little bit. So now, looking back at alcohol, how does it align with these 3 questions? So number 1, is alcohol performance enhancing? Well, alcohol can reduce anxiety and nervousness prior to a competition or at a competition because it acts as a depressant. So it might help some athletes feel more relaxed, less stressed. And in some sports, there's a lot of pressure, and so it can definitely help in remaining calm. So it can be performance enhancing in that case. Alcohol can also dull pain, which can temporarily allow athletes to push through discomfort, which could be perceived as beneficial in some sports where there's high physical contact or physical injury. So yes, again, it can be performance enhancing in that case. But most sports require activity, and activity causes the body temperature to rise and causes us to sweat. Well, alcohol is a diuretic, and it reduces the amount of urine the kidneys can absorb, which leads to dehydration. So alcohol and exercise together is only going to increase the likelihood of dehydration, which is detrimental to the sport's performance. So in this case, alcohol is not performance enhancing. Alcohol also compromises motor skills, balance, hand-eye coordination, reaction time, and it makes for poor decision-making skills. Those all negatively impact your performance, so in that case, it's not performance enhancing, and those fall in line with fulfilling criteria number 2. Number 2, does it represent an actual or potential health risk to an athlete? So, if you've been out drinking, athlete impairs your coordination and judgment. So you have a higher risk of injury, both from accidents and from failing to recognize or respond to your own physical limits or other outside environmental hazards. So in some sports like auto racing, equestrian, archery, or shooting even, being impaired could mean the difference between life and death between not just the athlete, but also the spectators. So yes, it definitely poses a health risk, but more so in specific sports than others. And then finally, number 3, does it violate the spirit of the sport? Now, to be honest, this one's hard to generalize for all sports instead of specific sports, but that's actually the point that they ended up using in their argument for unbanning this sport. So we're going to come back to that. Okay, so after looking at all the criteria of why it should or shouldn't be banned, the next thing was to look at any notable cases of athletes competing drunk. Now, there's a lot of retired professional athletes that claim that they competed drunk, whether it was football, basketball, baseball, but none of that compares to what happened with the Russian high jumper Ivan Yukov back in 2008. You see, Ivan showed up to a major track meet and he was visibly intoxicated. He was walking around, stumbling, tripping. At one point, he had to lean on a hurdle in order to take his sweatpants off, which he couldn't get off. So another one of his competitors came over to help him take off his sweatpants. And then an official came over to help him up, and he shrugged him off and then went to go make his high jump attempt, which instead of jumping over the bar, he jumped under the bar and just like laid down on the mat. He was clearly intoxicated. He was drunk. He got up and he walked over back to the sideline. At the sideline, instead of a water bottle, he had a vodka and Red Bull. And so this is why he became known as the drunk high jumper. So his coach and manager then pulled him from competition, and he didn't keep competing. So what happened? Well, track and field's world governing body, IAAF, which now is known as World Athletics, issued him a strong warning, but did not suspend him. They didn't issue him any specific punishment. All he had to do was reimburse the event organizers for their expenses. So even though at the time, WADA had issued alcohol as a banned substance, track and field's governing body did not test him, and they did not issue any specific punishment for violating rules. And the reason they didn't is because WADA only banned alcohol in 4 sports: air sports, automotive, archery, and powerboating. So in track and field, they weren't obligated to ban it. Now, as a side note, Ivan Yukov would go on to win the gold medal at the 2012 Olympic. In 2014, he jumped 2.42 meters, which is 7 feet 11 and a quarter inches, making him tied for the second highest jumper indoors of all time. What makes this even weirder is that in 2019, he was disqualified for all performances from July 2012 to December 2014 as part of the Russian state-sponsored doping program at the 2012 Olympics, which means he was stripped of gold Olympic medal and his massive 2.42 medal jump. So what did this incident tell us? Well, there's a disconnect between WADA, who lists alcohol as a banned substance, and the international sports federations that are in charge of testing and enforcing the rules. Some sports like darts, golf, bowling, billiards, and pools, and others are well known for more lenient attitudes towards alcohol, especially at the recreational level, which led to inconsistent enforcement and debates over fairness between sports. So if we go back and look at the specific rules, almost all other banned substances are universal, so across all sports, but only a small amount were selective for specific sports. So when WADA issued their update in 2018 prohibited substance list, alcohol was removed from the list as a banned substance. Now remember, we talked about this having more of an impact on some sports more than others. Well, that's because of safety issues. They listed 4 sports as being affected by the change: air sports, automotive, archery, and powerboating. And they stated that going forward, the federations for those 4 sports would be able to apply and enforce protocols for alcohol as they see fit. Basically, because alcohol was banned for some and not for others, they wanted to just remove alcohol as a banned substance, and they suggested that those sports themselves just make their own rules on whether they want to allow alcohol or not. The response from these 4 sports was, quote, disappointment, because all 4 sports, which are made up of multiple sports in themselves, had to adopt further guidelines to limit alcohol. Now remember, this is all at the highest level, right? Then you have each sports governing body. You've got national federations, you've got organizing events, systems, clubs, teams, etc., etc. So they all have their own individual rules regarding alcohol. So there's a lot of variation in whether or not alcohol is legal or not. So what do you think? Do you think alcohol should be banned? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you like this, I have a whole series on banned techniques you can go check out. Thanks for watching.